The betting pools across 17 systems had already closed. The outcome seemed certain. Species after species had attempted the Crucible of Keth'var, a survival challenge designed by the galaxy's most sadistic engineers, and none had lasted beyond 12 hours. The current record holder, a Vrexian war champion with redundant organ systems and crystalline bone structure, had tapped out at 10 hours and 47 minutes, weeping through compound eyes that had never shed tears before. Now, standing at the entrance to the containment dome on Station Helix 9, was someone the galaxy considered hilariously unqualified. A human named Jake Thompson. "You understand the waiver you signed?" The Clorthian administrator's voice buzzed with what might have been concern or possibly suppressed laughter. His mandibles clicked nervously as he reviewed the datapad for the 18th time. Atmospheric toxicity, gravitational fluctuations, temperature extremes, sonic bombardment, radiation exposure, sensory deprivation, and that's just the first cycle. No species has survived past the fourth cycle. Most don't make it past the second. Jake adjusted the standard-issue survival suit, a thin environmental membrane that provided minimal protection, just enough to prevent immediate death but not enough to prevent suffering. That was the point. The Crucible wasn't about dying. It was about enduring until you wanted to die. "Yeah, I read it," Jake said, stretching his arms above his head with a casualness that made the administrator's antenna twitch with disbelief. "Sounds rough. What's the prize money again?" 2 million credits. The administrator's tone suggested he thought this human would be lucky to earn 2 minutes of it. The payout scaled with time survived. Jake would need to last at least an hour to break even on his entry fee. Cool. Jake cracked his knuckles. "My daughter's college fund could use that. And hey, worst case scenario, I get a free sauna session, right?" The administrator stared. Around them, the observation deck was filling with spectators from dozens of species. Word had spread that a human was attempting the Crucible. The species known for dying if they skipped breakfast. The beings whose bodies fell apart if they sat still too long. The creatures who needed 8 hours of unconsciousness daily or they started hallucinating. In the viewing galleries, the laughter was not kind. "The human won't last 30 minutes, sneered a Dravothian merchant, his scales rippling with amusement. "Their pain tolerance is pathetically low. They cry from stubbed toes." "I give it 20 minutes, countered a Yulian observer, her crystalline form chiming with mirth. "The moment the gravity hits 3G, those fragile bones will snap." A Turellian broker was already updating his odds board. Human survival past 1 hour, 47 to 1. Past 2 hours, 200 to 1. Past 5 hours, 10,000 to 1. The idea of a human approaching the 10-hour record was so absurd it wasn't even listed. Jake noticed none of this. He was doing something that looked suspiciously like light jogging, warming up, for torture. "All right," he said, rolling his shoulders. "I'm ready." "Oh wait." He pulled out a small device, a music player, antiquated by galactic standards. "Can I bring this? Just some tunes to keep me company." The administrator consulted the rules. Personal items are technically permitted if they provide no survival advantage. Perfect. Jake popped in earbuds. "I made a playlist. 52 hours of my favorite songs. Figured I'd shoot for the whole thing, you know? Aim high and all that." The observation deck fell silent. 52 hours? The administrator's voice processing unit nearly glitched. "The maximum theoretical duration of the Crucible is 52 hours. No one has ever. You understand that's 5 complete cycles plus the final burn? That's not optimism, that's delusion." Jake grinned. It was the kind of smile that, had anyone in that room studied human history, would have terrified them. It was the smile of a species that had looked at mountains and said, "I'll climb that." The smile of beings who had stared at the stars and said, "I'll go there." The smile of creatures so absurdly, impossibly stubborn that they had conquered their own planet through sheer refusal to quit. "Delusion is just optimism that hasn't proved itself yet," Jake said. He stepped toward the entrance portal. "Besides, I told my kid I'd win her that college money. Can't let her down. And hey, I've done tough stuff before. I once worked retail during Christmas season. How bad could this be? The Crucible doors irised open with a sound like a scream. Jake Thompson walked inside, still smiling. The galaxy was about to learn something important about humans. They were not built to be comfortable. They were built to endure. And endurance, as it turned out, was a superpower all its own. The Crucible began with fire. Temperature sensors spiked to 85 degrees Celsius. Hot enough to denature proteins, hot enough to make breathing feel like inhaling glass. The observation screens showed Jake's vital signs immediately spike. Heart rate elevated. Cortisol levels rising. Sweat production extreme. He's already in distress. The Clorthian administrator noted vindication in his voice. Humans cannot thermoregulate effectively. He'll dehydrate and collapse within. Jake started dancing. Not collapsing. Not screaming. Dancing. Oh, this is my jam. His voice came through the audio feed. Slightly breathless but genuinely enthusiastic. The music was apparently something called Earth, Wind, and Fire. Whatever those elements were. September. Do you remember? The 21st night of September. He was singing. Badly. Off-key. While literally being baked alive. The Dravothian merchant leaned forward. Is he enjoying this? Impossible, muttered the Yulian observer. The heat should be overwhelming his nervous system. What they didn't understand, what no species in the galaxy understood, was that humans were born from a planet that wanted them dead. Earth wasn't a gentle cradle of life. It was a crucible in its own right. Temperatures that swung from lethal cold to lethal heat. Predators everywhere. Diseases that evolved as fast as their immune systems. Gravity that crushed their spines over decades. An atmosphere that was slowly poisoning them with oxygen. Humans weren't fragile. They were just constantly dying slowly, so good at it that they forgot it was happening. Jake's body was doing something remarkable. Evaporative cooling on overdrive. His sweat glands, 2 to 4 million of them, far more than any other species present, were dumping water onto his skin surface, and as it evaporated, it pulled heat away. His cardiovascular system was redirecting blood flow to his extremities, using his entire body as a radiator. His breathing had automatically shifted to a pattern that cooled incoming air across his wet tongue and throat. He wasn't comfortable, but he was functional, and function was all that mattered. After 2 hours, the temperature dropped to freezing, -40 Celsius. The kind of cold that turned moisture in the air into instant ice crystals. The spectators leaned in, expecting the human to finally break. Jake zipped his survival suit up higher. Okay, this is more like February in Minnesota. Not great, not terrible. His teeth chattered, but he kept moving, kept the blood flowing. You know what? This reminds me of ice fishing with my dad. We'd sit out on the lake for 8 hours waiting for walleye. This is way better because I can actually move around. He started doing jumping jacks. The Tyrellian broker frantically updated his odds. Past 3 hours, now 50 to 1. People were starting to place confused bets. By hour 4, gravity fluctuated to 4G. Jake's knees buckled. His spine compressed. Blood pooled in his extremities. Every movement was agony. Every breath a labor. Now. This sucks, he grunted, lowering himself to the floor. But even prone, he kept moving, flexing muscles, tightening and releasing. His cardiovascular system, trained by millennia of running down prey over vast distances, refused to let blood pool and clot. His heart, oversized for his body compared to most species, hammered away with stubborn efficiency. Fun fact, he gasped to no one in particular. Humans used to hunt by just jogging after animals until they died of exhaustion. We're not fast. We're just really, really annoying about not stopping. This feels about like mile 20 of a marathon, which I've done. For fun. Because humans are weird. When the gravity released at hour 5, Jake stood up, wobbly but unbroken. The observation deck was no longer laughing. They were staring in confused silence at the biological absurdity before them. The Clorthian administrator checked and rechecked his instruments. He's at 5 hours. He's broken the average survival time. Jake stretched, winced, and grinned at the cameras. 5 down. How many to go? 47? No problem. I once binged an entire TV series in one sitting. This is just like that, but with more suffering and better music. Hours 8 through 15 were when the Crucible stopped attacking the body and started attacking the mind. Sensory deprivation came first. The dome went absolutely dark, absolutely silent. No input except the human's own heartbeat, his own breath, his own thoughts spiraling in the void. This was when most species broke. Without external stimuli, their minds turned on themselves, found horrors in the nothingness, begged for release. Jake lasted 7 minutes before he started talking. So, fun story about my kid's principal. His voice echoed in the darkness. Guy calls me in because Emma, that's my daughter, apparently started a black market candy ring in the 4th grade. Full operation. Supply chain, distribution network, pricing tiers. I'm sitting there thinking, I should be mad, but honestly, kind of proud. He kept talking. Story after story. His first car. His worst job. The time he accidentally joined a marathon without training. His voice was hoarse, cracking, but he filled the void with words, with memory, with humanity. The observers were baffled. What is he doing? The Dravothian asked. I believe, said a Zenthari psychologist who had just arrived. He's narrating his life? Humans do this. They process through verbalization. Their social nature is so deeply embedded that they create an audience even when alone. That's pathetic, someone muttered. No, the psychologist said slowly, watching Jake's vital signs hold steady while his mouth kept moving. That's brilliant. He's turning isolation into connection. He's making himself not alone. Hour 12 brought sonic torture. Frequencies designed to resonate with bone structures, to cause pain at the quantum level. The Vrexian champion had lasted 40 minutes before his crystalline skeleton began to fracture from the vibrations. Jake's skeleton, built from calcium and collagen, was more flexible. It absorbed, distributed, adapted. The pain was extraordinary, but his nervous system, overwhelmed, began to do something remarkable. It started filtering, prioritizing, deciding what could be ignored. This is terrible, Jake shouted over the noise. It's like that concert I went to in college. Stood too close to the speakers. Ears rang for a week. This is worse, but the principle is the same. You just gotta... He paused to vomit from the pain, then continued, you just gotta breathe through it. By hour 15, the spectators had stopped jeering. The observation deck had tripled in size. News was spreading across the station. The human was still going. The impossible was happening. The Tyrellian broker had stopped taking bets. The odds had become meaningless. Hours 18 through 25 cycled through everything again, but worse. Hotter fires, deeper freezes, higher gravity. Each challenge compounded, designed to break whatever resistance remained. Jake's body was shutting down non-essential systems. His digestive system had mostly stopped, no energy to spare. His immune system was in overdrive, fighting the inflammation that racked every cell. His endocrine system was dumping stress hormones that would have killed him if released all at once, but in measured doses became fuel. His mind employed every trick evolution had given it. Dissociation during the worst moments. Hyperfocus during the rest. Memory recall to escape the present. His brain's reward system, hijacked by desperation, started releasing dopamine for small victories. Surviving another minute, taking another breath, making another joke. Okay, real talk, he said during hour 23, his voice a ragged whisper. This is the worst vacation I've ever been on. 0 stars. Would not recommend. But you know what? I've been through worse. My divorce? Worse. My father's funeral? Worse. That time I got food poisoning at a cousin's wedding? Honestly, toss-up. He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. The human mind can endure just about anything if it has a reason. My reason is waiting at home, probably doing homework, wondering if her dad is going to come back with that college fund. So yeah, I'm not quitting. You built this thing to break people? Cool. Humans are already broken. We just keep going anyway. Hour 25 ended. Jake Thompson was still conscious, still breathing, still talking. The galaxy had stopped laughing. Hour 30 brought the Crucible's worst feature. The cascade. Every torture at once. Fire and ice alternating every 30 seconds. Crushing gravity and weightlessness swapping without warning. Sonic weapons at full blast. Complete darkness punctuated by blinding light. Toxic atmosphere that burned the lungs. All of it simultaneously, randomly designed to prevent any adaptation. The observation deck had fallen into reverent silence. Medical teams from a dozen species were analyzing the data streams, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. His cortisol levels should have killed him hours ago, whispered a Yulian physician. His muscle tissue is catastrophically damaged, added a Dravothian medic. He should be catatonic from the pain. His psychological profile indicates complete disassociation from reality, the Xenthari psychologist said. Yet he remains conscious and aware. On screen, Jake was curled in a ball, shaking, covered in his own vomit and blood from a dozen ruptures. He had stopped joking, stopped talking. For the first time, he was silent. The betting pools reopened, swung toward failure. This was it. The human had reached his limit. Then, barely audible over the cacophony, he started singing again. Not the upbeat songs from his playlist. Something else. Something slow and mournful and achingly beautiful. A lullaby, perhaps. The words were lost in the noise, but the melody persisted. "What is he doing?" someone asked. The Xenthari psychologist's eyes widened with understanding. "He's singing to his daughter. He's turning this into something meaningful. He's not suffering randomly. He's suffering for someone." It was the kind of thing that made no tactical sense. No survival advantage. Pure emotional logic, the type that only humans seem to possess. The ability to transmute pain into purpose, to make meaning out of meaninglessness. And it was working. Jake's vital signs, which had been diving toward critical, stabilized. Not improved, but stabilized. His body found a new equilibrium in hell. His mind clutching to the one thing the Crucible couldn't take. His reason for being there. Hour 35. Hour 40. The cycles continued, but Jake had found something the designers had never anticipated. Humans didn't endure by being strong. They endured by being too stubborn to know when to quit, too foolish to accept the impossible, too loving to abandon what they fought for. At hour 42, station security had to expand the observation deck again. Thousands of beings from hundreds of species watched in disbelief. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was a demonstration, a lesson, a revelation about a species the galaxy had dismissed as weak. The Clorthian administrator stood at the viewing port, mandibles slack. "The record is 10 hours and 47 minutes, he said to no one in particular. "He's quadrupled it. The theoretical maximum is 52 hours, but no one thought. No being could actually." "Humans," said an elderly Turellian broker who had lost a fortune on incorrect odds, "are apparently not like other beings." Hour 45. Jake had stopped singing, but he was laughing now, a broken, rattling sound that might have been madness or might have been triumph. It was hard to tell. Perhaps with humans, those were the same thing. "You know the funny thing?" His voice crackled through the speakers. "I almost quit. Hour 32, I almost hit the button. Then I remembered something my dad told me when I was learning to ride a bike. He said, pain is just your body's way of checking if you're still alive. As long as it hurts, you're winning." Another laugh, wet and painful. "So thanks, Crucible. Thanks for reminding me I'm alive. Thanks for the college fund. Thanks for showing my daughter that her old man doesn't quit. Even when he really, really should." Hour 48 arrived. 4 hours from the theoretical maximum. 4 hours from a record that was meant to be impossible. 4 hours from Jake Thompson cementing humanity's reputation across the galaxy. The question was no longer if he would break. The question was, would the Crucible break first? Hour 50 marked the beginning of the final burn, the last phase of the crucible that only existed in theory because no one had ever reached it. The chamber's walls began to glow with radiation that existed at the edge of lethality. Every cell in Jake's body was taking damage at the molecular level. His DNA was fragmenting. His tissues were breaking down faster than they could repair. This wasn't torture anymore. This was a slow dissolution of biological integrity. Medical alarms screamed across every monitor. Physicians from a dozen species shouted at the administrator to stop the test, to extract the human before permanent damage became death. But Jake hadn't pressed the emergency stop, and the rules were absolute. The crucible continued until the participant quit or the time elapsed. He's dying, the Julian physician stated flatly. Not metaphorically, literally. His cellular structure is catastrophic. On screen, Jake was no longer moving. His eyes were closed. His breathing was shallow, irregular. For long moments, it seemed like he had finally lost consciousness, that his body had made the decision his mind refused to make. Then his lips moved. The audio pickups barely caught it. 49 hours. Emma's tuition is 4 years. 40 grand a year. I'm at 190,000 credits now. That's enough. That's enough for her. His hand twitched toward the emergency cutoff. The observation deck held its collective breath. Jake's hand stopped, trembled, pulled back. But room and board. Books, that's another 10 grand a year. And she'll want to study abroad, she mentioned that. And grad school maybe. I should get her all of it. The whole package. Every opportunity. His eyes opened, bloodshot and unfocused. 3 more hours. Just 3. I've done 3-hour meetings at work. 3-hour drives. 3-hour dinners with my ex-wife's parents. 3 hours is nothing. 3 hours is... He trailed off. The radiation was cooking him from the inside out. His organs were failing in sequence. His immune system had completely collapsed. His nervous system was misfiring, sending false signals, phantom sensations. A human medical officer, recently arrived from Earth, was reviewing the biological data with mounting horror. His body is cannibalizing itself. He's burning muscle tissue for energy. His kidneys are in failure. His liver is... I don't even know what his liver is doing. He shouldn't be doing anything. He should be dead. Then why isn't he? The Zenthari psychologist asked quietly. Because, the human officer said with something like awe and terror in her voice. He hasn't decided to be yet. And humans are really, really bad at accepting decisions they don't want to make. Hour 51. Jake was hallucinating now, talking to people who weren't there. His daughter, his father, old friends. The conversations made no sense, jumping topics, mixing memories. His brain, starved of oxygen and saturated with stress hormones, was misfiring. But his heart kept beating. His lungs kept breathing. His body, that impossible collaboration of trillion of cells that had survived for billion years of evolution, refused to stop. This is insane, someone whispered in the observation deck. This is physically impossible. No, corrected the elderly Torellian broker, watching his screens with wet eyes. This is humanity. This is what they do. They look at impossible and say, watch me. Hour 51 and 45 minutes. 15 minutes remaining. Jake's vital signs were barely registering. He was more dead than alive, held in existence by sheer stubborn refusal. His body had exhausted every reserve, broken every limit, violated every biological law. In medical terms, he should have been a corpse. In human terms, he was 15 minutes from victory. The station's lights dimmed as every screen, every display, every monitor turned to show the same thing. A countdown. 15 minutes. 14. 13. The galaxy watched. And Jake Thompson, barely conscious, barely alive, too stupid or too brave to know the difference, whispered one last thing. Almost there, Emma. Almost there. Dad's got you. 12 minutes remaining. He was going to make it. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had always known. That consciousness is just stubbornness by another name. Hour 52. 0 seconds. the Crucible powered down. Jake Thompson had won. The observation deck exploded into chaos. Cheering, shouting, disbelief from thousands of throats and voice synthesizers. Medical teams rushed into the chamber, extracting Jake's barely conscious form, rushing him to emergency care even as the credits transferred to his account. $2 million, the full prize, plus bonuses for breaking records. In the medical bay, as doctors worked frantically to save his life, Jake's vital signs slowly, impossibly, began to improve. His body, given even the slightest break, immediately began to repair. His immune system rebooted. His organs resumed function. His consciousness returned in fragments. The first thing he said, voice barely a whisper through damaged vocal cords, "Did I get it? The money?" The human medical officer, tears streaming down her face, nodded. "You got it. All of it. Plus endorsements. You're probably looking at 10 million when this is done." Jake smiled. Even that hurt. Good. Emma's gonna get the best education in the galaxy. Maybe I'll have enough left over for a vacation. Somewhere nice. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere that's not actively trying to kill me. He closed his eyes. Though honestly, this wasn't that bad. I mean, it was terrible. Worst thing I've ever done. But I've had worse Mondays. The galaxy would talk about Jake Thompson's run for generations. He became a legend, not because he was stronger than other species, he wasn't. Not because he was tougher, debatable, but because he demonstrated something that would change humanity's standing in the galactic community forever. When humans decide something is worth suffering for, there is no force in the universe that can make them quit. Not pain, not fear, not reason, not even the Crucible of Keth'var. 3 weeks later, Jake was released from medical care. He returned to Earth, to his daughter, to his normal life. The money was transferred. Emma's future was secured. And when reporters asked if he'd do it again, he laughed and said, "Not for all the credits in the galaxy. Once was enough." Then he paused, grinned that same impossible grin, and added, "Unless Emma needs grad school money, then we'll talk."